property, because when you're dealing with a buyer, the question is, how much do we offer? And you as the agent should never be the one giving them the price. It's always leading them, helping them determine the price that they want to offer. So whether I'm going for a listing, like if I'm going on a listing appointment, the seller always wants a price from me. Like, how much is my property worth? What should we list it at? It's very dangerous for us as agents to give a price, because if the seller doesn't like our price, they'll just go on to the other agent that gives them the price they like, right? And when I sit with a seller, I bring comps with me in my listing presentation, and together we will decide what to price the property at. I don't want it to bite me. Like, I just don't want. I don't want to pick the price, and they say you picked the price. The property didn't sell. It was your price. I don't let that happen. Now, a seller will always try to trick me into giving them a price. They're like, "You're the expert. That's why you're here. You have to give us a price." And I'm like, "Okay, here are the comps. Here are all the similar properties that have sold in the area. Let's put on our buyer glasses and our buyer hat, pretend we're buyers right now. Here's your house for sale. Based upon these other recent comparable sales, what, as a buyer, would you pay for your house?" And I always throw it back at them, and I'll take them through the comps, and then I'll start throwing out numbers. Would you be a buyer for your house at this number based upon these comps? So it's very interesting. Most of the time, an unrealistic seller will lower their price mentally and come to the realization that the property is not worth what they thought it was after they see the comps. A seller always thinks that their house is worth more than it is. That's just how it is. Now, there are some realistic sellers out there that, it could be someone who has an investment property. They live out of state. They're not really familiar with the area, what's been going on in the area, and they're calling you to sell the property. Your duty to the seller is to sell the property. That's why you're there. If you're as a listing agent, they're calling you in to sell their property. And if you're not giving them the truth, you're doing a disadvantage, right? I mean, there's no point in putting the property at a high price and it doesn't sell. That's actually a disadvantage. You're there to help them sell it, and you're there to help them come to the truth about their value. Yeah.
And we never give out a price.
I don't want to give out a price, because
It doesn't make sense.
if I give a price,
Yeah.
then it's my price and my fault if it doesn't sell.
Right.
I always want to have that ace in my
Right,
pocket.
exactly.
We came to this price together. I want them to hire me because they know I'm going to do a good job for them, not because of the price. They should be hiring me because of the work I'm going to do for them, and they see the research I'm doing. They see how hard I'm working. They know I'm going to communicate well with buyers and buyers agents. They know I'm going to properly market their property. That's why they should be hiring me, right? Not because of the price. Anyone can put a price on property, right? So it's about what I'm going to do for them. And as a listing agent, I want to give their property the most exposure possible. It's all about the exposure. So what I tell a seller is, every buyer and every agent looking in this area will know your property is on the market, and they will have a chance to bid on it. That's what I'm doing. And I'm going to present it in the best possible light. Professional photographer, all those photos will be marketed. My job actually starts once the property is photo ready. I have people that I can bring in here to help get the property to be photo ready. Once I have my photos, they go to marketing, and we start the process of finding buyers. Now, that's with a seller. With a buyer, I don't know who picked the price on the property. I see the properties for sale. I see it's in the MLS. I see there's a asking price there. I don't know if it's realistic or not. So I go to the property with my buyer, we look at the property. Do they have an emotional, do they like it? Like, most purchases are emotional. Someone has to feel warm. It's really rare that a buyer is not emotional about a property. It could be, they could be just strictly an investor. There's no emotion whatsoever. They do the math. Will the rent pencil out? Can they make a profit? Can they be cash flow positive or even? And there's no emotion, but usually there is emotion when it's your primary residence. So once a buyer writes an offer, even though they're telling you that that's their most that they'll pay, they don't get it, they'll walk away. Once they write that offer, they are emotionally involved in that property. And you'll see it. You'll just laugh to yourself because you'll see the same person that was telling you that they're not so emotionally involved, they really are. And so as an agent, I'm calling the listing agent. I'm asking the listing agent, obviously, is the property still available? Because never know, another offer can come in, the seller can accept it, it can happen in 2 seconds. I want to make sure the property is available. Are there any offers on the property? Because right now I'm talking to my buyer. So my buyer, I just took my buyer the property, my buyer likes it, they want to write an offer. So calling the listing agent, I saw the property with my buyer today. Do you have any offers right now? How many do you have? How much are they for? Now, it's a very tricky question. The listing agent may not want to tell you, what the other offers are at. They might tell you what the other offers are. It's up to the negotiating style of the listing agent. Yes.
Do they have, so then you call the listing agent. This just came to me. I would say, well, what is your client willing to pay?
Right, okay,
Yeah.
so that's good. So if I'm the listing agent, I never will sell my client short. So if my asking price is $1 million, and an agent calls me and says, and they ask me, what will it take to get the property? I'm not gonna say 900,000. Like I might have had a private conversation with my seller, and my seller will say to me, I'll take 900, but let's list it at $1 million, and hopefully we'll get the $1 million. But I will take 9. That's a private conversation that I'm not going to relay it to the buyer's agent. If my listing price is $1 million, I need to respond to the buyer. I know my seller will take at least $1 million.
Okay.
Right?
Say more.
I mean, the asking is $1 million. So if I have no offers on the property right now, I'll say I don't have any offers right this second. I am talking to other interested people. Hopefully, I'm expecting something to get written. Hello. But right now I don't have anything in writing. I know my sellers will take at least the asking price. Right? If I give a lower number than the asking price, I'm selling my sellers short, right?
Yeah.
So because the buyer that is calling me might be willing to pay them, right? And if I give them a lower number, it's happened to me where a buyer has called me and they say, I'm interested in this property. I look it up on the MLS and they tell me, I don't remember what the actual numbers were. I think they were the asking price just for, I think it was like $799. My buyer called me, they said, I want that property. Let's write full asking. I just want to get it. And I called the listing agent, and it's a property that had been on the market probably like 60 something days. And I called the listing agent and I said, what will it take to get it? And the listing agent said to me, don't forget that asking price was like $749 or $799. The listing agent said to me, don't write anything under $650. The asking price was almost $800.
Yeah.
The listing agent said, don't write anything under $650.
Right, all right.
So I called my buyer back and I said, I have a feeling that we can get this property quickly and for a lot less than the asking price. Just trust me on this. Let's write at this amount. And we ended up getting a property, obviously.
How much?
I don't remember. I have to go back. But immediately I saved my client $100,000 for sure.
I'll give you a recent one.
Yeah, please.
I saved the client about $50,000 on the same.
Yeah.
Client, it was listed at $800,000. I called, I asked the price. I always ask specifically, what's the number your client is willing to take to get this thing done? I write it up today, I send it over to you, we're in escrow by this day.
Yeah.
They're like, well, kind of looking for, and in that particular case, it was like the highest offer, so she told me, well, the highest offer we've gotten on the property was like $865. I was right, all right, if I write it $875, are we in escrow? She's like, yeah, go ahead, send it
See,
over.
that's the right conversation to have. If I send you this number, do you think we'll have a deal? That's a great question.
And
You're gonna learn so much just from that question, especially when there are multiple offers, like, hopefully that agent is playing ball, right?
right, so they got it, they accepted the offer, the next day they got an offer at full price.
Right, exactly, that always happens, right?
Biggest
Yeah.
one ever.
Time is of the essence when it comes to offers. You never wanna wait for another offer to come in. You wanna try to lock it up with your buyer before a higher offer comes in.
What was the dialogue? If you have.
So.
If I write it this number,
If
will
I
it get
write,
accepted?
if I write it this number, or can we open escrow?
Got it.
That's the right question. When there are multiple offers on a property, that's the question. If they don't say yes, you might bump up your number a little bit. Will such and such get it? Will such and such get it?
The worst that you'll usually get is, and depending on what kind of, in that particular case, like she had told me, they had the highest at 865, which is why I went up. I was like, I'm not gonna play with you, like, let's just do it at this number. But the worst you'll usually get is, well, it'll definitely get you in the conversation. And at that point, you wait for them to send out that counter or that multiple counter. Yeah, and then you'll usually know by that time. Like, I've been asking that question, I've been given a multiple counter that was directly, they may have had other offers, the multiple counter. Sometimes an agent will address a multiple counter offer directly to the point you've been talking about. Like, purchase price to be this, but we want this, and this. It just so happens, I was talking to the agent about, if I write a this contingency, if this and this and this, and this, it will, like, what it will do. I'm getting a counter that's like directly to me.
So let's talk real quick about counter offers, because what happens is you write an offer. So you're writing the residential purchase agreement. That is your offer. The seller can do three things. They can accept your offer. They can counter your offer, or they can ignore your offer. Right? Those are the three things that the seller can, right? You write an offer with your buyer, the seller can accept, reject, basically, not do anything with it, or they can counter it. If they counter it, they can give a seller counter offer number one, or they can give a seller multiple counter offer number one. So there's two different types of counter offers. There's a regular counter offer, and there's a multiple counter offer. So Shirley just brought in a multiple counter offer.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, what?
So the SCO, the seller counter offer, is direct response to you. The seller multiple counter offer is response to multiple people, and they're looking for best terms.
Yeah, so so the difference between a counter offer and a multiple counter offer is, on a multiple counter offer, the seller has the last say. On a regular counter offer, it can be accepted by a buyer and become binding on the seller. If the seller gives a multiple counter offer, it cannot be binding on the seller until the seller has the final say. So let's give an example. Hello everybody. Okay. So buyer makes an offer, and then the seller has two offers. Okay, the asking price is $1 million, and the asking price is $1 million. We have an offer from party A for $1 million and party B for $1 million. They're both giving full price. Okay, the seller gives a multiple counter offer for $1,000,001 to both of the buyers. Shaking your head, what's that?
That's not good.
That's not good. Full price offer.
What if they both come back and offer and agree?
Okay. So here, that's why we have two different counter offers. So if you give a regular counter offer, that can be accepted and is binding. If you give a multiple counter offer, the buyer can accept it, but it's not a deal until the seller signs the second one. Seller has to re-sign it. So the seller always gets to choose the buyer on a multiple counter offer. So this protects the seller. So the seller received two offers, the seller made multiple counter offers, and now the multiple counter offers come back. Now the seller has the option to give a new counter offer. Okay. So you're always going to be dealing. So back in the day before me, it had to do with timing. And the first person to the table was we need to protect the seller from selling his property to two different people. Right? In the case you were shaking your head,
Right.
you can't, what if there's two acceptances?
Right.
So-
and also if you do that, if someone says your best and made that best and not.
Best and final, highest and best. Okay.
Yeah.
So I never like to use the word final.
Right.
I use the word highest and best.
Highest and best.
Because it leaves opportunity for more counting. Right? Final, I don't like final. What's final?
So what if they, I mean, that probably.
If you're using the word final, you're on counter offer number 10 already.
Right.
So here's the sequence of counter offers. The buyer makes residential purchase agreement. That's the offer. Now the seller gives counter offer 1. Whether that's a regular counter or multiple counter. Seller gives counter offer 1. Buyer now gives buyer counter offer 1. Seller counter 2, buyer counter 2. Seller counter 3, buyer counter 3. It used to be 1, 2, 3, 4, but they eliminated that because there was one form called counter offer, and it was used for both the buyer or the seller. Now they've separated them. There's a buyer counter offer and a seller counter offer, two different forms. And the way that they're numbered is buyer makes their offer, seller counter 1, buyer counter 1, seller counter 2, buyer counter 2. That's how the sequence of events.
And that's the paperwork.
That's the paperwork sequence of events, yeah. So in a seller multiple counter offer, the seller has the final say. That protects the seller to get the most money. Okay. Just want to talk to you guys about a deal I'm currently in. It's a crazy deal. You guys, when you studied for your license, you learned how to hold title, right? You can hold title as an individual. You can hold title with someone else, with a spouse as community property or joint tenants. If you have different shares in a property, you can hold title as tenants in common. I listed a property a few weeks ago, husband and wife, as community property. That's how they hold title. Husband and wife as community property. The husband passed away 2 days ago. I'm in escrow. Husband passed away. There's no will and there's no trust. This means probate. Yeah. So if the property is not in a trust, it will go to probate. Okay, probate can be a very long process. There's going to be court involved, and they'll have to decide. Is there going to be an attorney? Is there going to be a court-appointed administrator for the estate? Basically, probate is going to settle out the husband's side of his estate. There will be publishings. All debtors need. You're hereby on notice to tell us what is owed by this individual, and then the court will appoint someone. There's kids involved, so basically they're going to take the husband's portion, make sure that the kids, there'll probably be something created for the kids. It's a horrible long process. So what happens? The buyer's in a deal now that I can't sell property. So yes, the sale is pending on the estate. So if the buyer wants to remain in the deal, that's a question. Sometimes death does void a transaction. Right, death does void the transaction, so that could be. If the buyer still wants to go forward with the sale and the seller wants to go forward with the sale, and the buyer is willing to wait the time, then we could probably go forward. We'll see what happens. I don't know. But all I'm saying is, we're not attorneys, we can't give legal advice, but just know if a property is not in trust, that there will be a probate. And you guys just sharing that with you. I think Steve Jobs had a property that would usually, it used to be that when someone was refinancing, they'd want to go to the bank and get a lower, better rate. The bank would make them take it out of the trust temporarily while the refinancing was happening, and then they could put it back into the trust. I think he owned one property that was taken out of trust, he refinanced and forgot to put it back into the probate and went through probate when he passed away. So it doesn't matter, how much money you have, whatever. If the property's not in a trust, it will go through probate. And probate just figures out where the money needs to go. So if there's kids, they want to make sure the kids are taken care of. There's a spouse, there's debts, all those kinds of things.
So in this case, would it have been possible for one spouse to have power of attorney over the other spouse? And that would have solved
So
the issue?
you can have power of attorney, but a power of attorney is, it expires upon death.
Probate initiates when the holding entity dies, period. That's why you put it in trust, because
A trust can't die.
Okay.
It's an everlasting.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there's crazy stuff that we learn every day. So, I learned something on every deal.
So you're essentially in a no man's land right now.
So right now, I am the listing agent for a property that I can't sell. That can't be sold. Because there's no title insurer that will give title insurance on a property. So everything has to go through title.
Yeah.
Title gives the insurance and title won't insure the sale. So there's no one to sign on the husband's behalf. Right? Because the husband signed the purchase agreement, but he can't sign the grantee. There was no grantee signed. Even if there was a grantee signed, I don't think escrow and title would allow it to be reported.
The amount,
I can tell you.
Yeah.
That they will. That one, they will, if the
If
grantee
the
is
grantee has already been signed,
Yes,
so-
because I had the same thing happen to me on the opposite side. I had a buyer, one of 3 buyers, who passed away
It's
5 days before we were to close.
This is a rare
And
occurrence.
and it was literally the day she was supposed, it was literally, we had the notary scheduled to go out for the grantee to be signed by the buyers. The next day she died. It's supposed to be done on a Monday, or it's supposed to be done on a Monday, she died on a Saturday.
Wow.
And title actually told me that specifically. They were like, if the grantee.
So the grantee was signed or was not
It
signed?
was not signed.
Was not
They were like, if the grantee was signed, then we could go through. If it's not. that's
So that was a call made by the title
the
company.
title.
So they're insuring the sale, basically. So,
Yeah.
all right, it is what it is. So, okay, so just starting with the offer, and we went through it. I just want to go through it again. So, you take your buyer to the property. They want to write an offer. Hopefully, they've been in touch with their lender. Because along with your offer should be going proof of funds and a pre-approval. So according to the purchase contract, proof of funds and pre-approval are attached. And that's what it says on the contract, they're attached. Now, the contract will allow for days after acceptance to provide those items. But it's really rare, I would say, for a seller and listing agent to approve a buyer that they don't know has the capacity or capability to buy property. So you might be able to push through an offer. I mean, if you're representing someone that you know has the money, everyone knows has the money. I mean, George Clooney, like if I'm writing an offer for George Clooney, I mean, I don't think anyone's gonna question whether he has the money. Right? But there are some agents out there who want to do their due diligence, they don't care who the buyer is, show me the money, right? Show me the money, I mean, so what is proof of funds? Proof of funds is a current bank statement. Current meaning it shows the recent date. It has the buyer's name and the balance. I don't want a phone screenshot of some online bank statement that's only showing me a dollar amount with no name and no date. I don't want that. I want to see page one of the statement, and the buyer's agent can black out the account number for security purposes. That's totally fine. But I need to see a name, current account, and funds. I might also accept as proof of funds a letter of credit. So if the bank can provide something that says available credit and it's enough to cover the entire purchase or the down payment, great. If it's not going to cover the entire purchase, but only the down payment, I want to make sure that the lender is okay with that. So I will get on the phone with the buyer's lender all the time, right? If I'm going to call the buyer's lender, then my question to the lender is, have you reviewed their credit report? Have you reviewed their taxes? All their paperwork. So the difference between a pre-qualification and pre-approval. Pre-qualification means verbally, they're approved verbally. That's pre-qualification. Pre-approval means that the lender has seen their taxes, seen their money, right, seen their assets, ran their credit, and they've been approved for a loan pending what the property is. Because the property also has to be approved, if the lender's willing to loan based upon price and conditions. So the information that I need from a buyer in order to write their offer is I need to know their name that they want the offer from, I need the legal name. Is there going to be another person on the purchase agreement? So sometimes money is coming from a parent. Okay. A lot of times the money is coming from a parent to help them out. And this is a conversation that I'm having with the lender also. The lender needs to know where the money's coming from. Just so you guys don't waste time with kids who the money's coming from the parents. If you're helping out a kid, and the kid could be in their 60s, if you're helping out a kid where the money's coming from the parent, make sure you're involving the parent in your property hunt. Make sure that the parent is involved in your hunting for property. Because what's going to happen? You're going to show the kid a property. The kid's going to fall in love with this property. You're ready to write an offer. And then all of a sudden the kid is telling his parents or parent about the property that they just saw. They fell in love with it. Can they have the money? And the parent can go, whoa, whoa, whoa. I don't know what agent you're working with. I have my own agent that I work with for all my property purchases. If you want to buy a property, you're using my agent. Okay. So just letting you know that could very well happen when the parent is the one putting the money. A lot of parents feel like they need to be the ones in control and protect their child, right? So they're going to protect their child using their agent and make sure that it's a sound financial decision and that their crazy kid isn't out there just buying the first property that they see. So does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. So if you involve the parent right away and you'll nurture that relationship with the parent, they will obviously be proceeding with you. If they know that you're helping their kid, then you're going to be, I mean, when I say obviously, I mean, just make sure that they know that you're going to be the one writing the offer, because you don't want that parent pulling in their agent at the last second and writing an offer. So if you don't have a buyer representation agreement signed, that is possible. Is the parent's name going to be the buyer, or is the kid's name going to be the buyer? Right? Now, the kid might feel very uncomfortable having that conversation with their parent. So these are just, things I'm bringing up with you because you need to, you're going to be in a situation where you're going to have to figure out who's my client. Is my client the kid or is my client the parent? And then if the lender is involved, you know, you have to figure out who's the offer coming from. It's coming from both parties. And then we can't give advice how to hold title. But it's very important how title is held, not when it's not important how title is held now. It's important how title is held when the property gets sold, which means they need to anticipate what's going to happen in the future now. So there's a tax implication when the property gets sold. They need to think about that up front. That's how they pick how to hold title. Now, title should always hopefully go into a trust, because that will avoid probate, right? So we always would recommend trust, but we can't recommend what type or anything like that because we're not attorney. Whenever your client's asking you for legal advice, you don't do that. We don't know law unless you're an attorney. You can't give legal advice, and you should. If I have a client asking me if their attorney should be reviewing the purchase contract, I'm very careful how I would respond to that question. So I might ask, is their attorney a real estate attorney? Because I am an active real estate. So, I'm a real estate licensee that I do this every day for my profession. I buy and sell properties and help with contract. This is what I do. An attorney isn't someone in the field doing this every day. Like, they might be able to advise you on the legal aspects of buying and selling the property. But, this is what I do. I do purchase contracts. And also, attorneys are not entitled to commissions unless they are licensed brokers. Okay, so just so you guys know, like, an attorney doesn't automatically can't get a commission. The only people that can get commission are real estate brokers. So if an attorney has a Juris Doctorate, if they have their JD degree allows them to sit for the bar and become an attorney, pass the bar exam. It also allows them to take the test for a real estate broker. So instead of the education required that you guys did, their JD education allows them to take the test, the broker test. So if they don't have a broker license, they're not getting paid out of the commission. Okay, it's just any questions so far working with buyers? So part one we got into the basics of the contract, but this is working with buyers, and I just want to make sure everyone gets paid. Working with buyer, there's always going to be something to learn, always. Okay, so first step working with buyers, I'm going to do comps. Like, I'm going to tell my buyer, okay, you like this property, I'm going to go back to my computer and send you comps, and then you as the buyer's agent are going to call the listing agent now and try to find out as much as you can where you need to be in price. I will ask questions and not talk. Right? I will purposely have an uncomfortable silence to try to let the other agent talk and give me more information. I'll try to develop some rapport with the agent. I can tell you that if you're in multiple offers and there's very little communication with you and the listing agent, you're probably not in the right. I'm very concerned when there's no communication from a listing agent to me. Now, there are some very busy listing agents that don't, they have many deals they're working on, and, just submit your offer and we'll deal with it in writing. They're not replying to anybody. That is sometimes the case. But if I'm the listing agent on a property and I have multiple offers, and there's one agent that's constantly calling me, texting me, I have the buyer for this property, we'll do whatever it takes to get this property. That's the person I want to be in escrow with. I don't want to be in escrow with someone that could back out next week, because that is not good for my listing. If I'm in escrow and then all of a sudden it falls out of escrow and then it's back on market, I'm probably not going to be able to get as much money as I was when it was a fresh listing. Like, if I put a brand new property on the market for $1 million, it's actually worth like 1.1, and I come in low and I have all this excitement, everyone wants the property, getting the bids up, and then it goes into escrow, and then that buyer backs out.
Okay, at what price?
I go in escrow at 1-1.
All right,
It still says $1 million on the MLS, I'm not changing that number. But I'm in escrow at 1-1, and we do inspections, and something comes up, buyer backs out. Now I'm back on market. And now what? Now buyers are coming in saying, hey, what happened? You were in escrow, what happened? All of a sudden, it's a little tainted now. My awesome brand new listing with all the excitement doesn't have the same excitement now because they want to know what happened with the buyer. Why did they back out? It's such a great house. Everyone was so excited about it. How come they back out? So now I need to explain to all these new buyers why they need to come up back up to 1-1 where we were. And that might not be the case now, right? So I'm very careful who I select as my buyer. I want the buyer that's gonna stay in escrow. Now, there's no way to guarantee it, and there's another thing, advice. Let the seller choose the buyer they're going with. So let the seller price it, let the seller choose who they're picking for their buyer. You don't want it coming back to bite you, that you're the one that chose this buyer. How could you let me get this buyer? I wanted to go with that buyer. All right, so just, we want to avoid that situation.
Yeah.
But I'm telling my seller, I've had great communication with this buyer. The agent, I really feel like we'll keep the deal together. We've researched, their down payment, everything. I've talked to their lender. They're really strong. This buyer here, blah, blah, blah. There is a form called summary of multiple offers. Okay, so there is a contract form called summary. If you just search for summary, you'll see that it's summary of multiple offers. It allows you to put the terms for each offer so they can be compared side to side. Summary of multiple offers. Yeah.
I have a question about inspection. Let's say, for example, my offer gets accepted and we do inspection and something comes back wrong with the house.
Yeah.
Like, for example, AC. Is it better to let the seller fix it or ask for credit?
So the advantage to getting a credit instead of a repair happening is that if there's a credit given to the buyer to make the repair, the buyer will have the ability to choose their own repair person. The buyer will have the warranty on that repair, and they will make as good a repair as they want. If you ask the seller to make the repair, they can hire their cousin Joe that will make the repair. That might be just a Band-Aid. And it may not be as good a repair as the buyer would have liked. Right? And then the buyer is going to be stuck having to pay again out of their pocket to make the repair, even though the seller did. But for the seller, I don't want to be responsible as the seller. If I'm making the repair, now I have to warranty that repair as the seller. So having a credit is always the best option for everybody. I would always recommend the credit card.
And do you get credit for the full amount or just like?
So
70%?
everything's a negotiation. And the seller does not need to do anything except sell at the purchase price that was accepted. So the seller basically accepts a contract from the buyer, agreeing to sell at a certain price and close on a certain date, and give disclosures. That's all the seller has to do. They cannot hide anything they know about the property. They have to disclose. And they have to sell by a certain date at a certain price. The buyer is allowed to do their inspections, and they are allowed to ask for credits or repairs. But the seller doesn't have to do it. Now, it's a trade to keep the buyer as a buyer. So the buyer makes the offer as is in its current condition. So it's an as is offer. You're going to have buyers that want to add the words as is, or a seller may want to put in a counter as is. The offer already says as is. Now it's as is. As a buyer, I'm making an offer as is, as I know the property to be in its current condition, now I'm gonna do my inspections and I'm gonna find out about things I wasn't previously aware of. So now that I know about the chimney that doesn't work, or the sewer line that needs to be repaired, I'm gonna ask the seller probably for a credit towards those repairs. So as a buyer's agent, I had my general inspection telling me there's an issue. Then I might need to call my electrician or my plumber or the chimney guy, hopefully giving me a quote for the repairs. I'm gonna assemble all those quotes and then I'm gonna give a request for repair to the seller with those reports and asking them for a credit to cover those repairs. The seller now can say no and risk losing me as a buyer because I'm still in my contingency period for inspections. So if the seller wants to keep me as a buyer and they know, now they have the reports that they're gonna have to disclose to any future buyer. Right? Because like, as a buyer's agent, I gave them my inspection reports. So those reports now have to be disclosed. So it's to the seller's advantage maybe to keep me as their buyer and give me something. Right? Using that as like.
Is it lowering the price of touch?
It can be a purchase price reduction or a credit. Credit, so,
Yeah.
so if I am buying $1 million property and my costs as a buyer are gonna be some property taxes that I'm reimbursing the seller that they may have paid in advance. My loan costs, I'm not gonna have a ton of expenses as a buyer. But I mean, I have escrow costs, I have title fee for my lender. My credit amount can't exceed my closing costs as a buyer. So if my credits are gonna be higher than my closing costs, I need to ask for a price reduction. Before I send my request to repair with a credit amount, before I do that, I call the lender first and I say, I'm about to ask for a credit for this amount. Is that allowed? And the lender will tell me yes or no, or this is the most you can ask for. Okay, now, so what is a credit compared to a price reduction? So let's say I'm buying $1 million property, it's gonna cost me actually $1,015,000 because I have my lender fees and my escrow fees or whatever. My prepaid property test could be less, but I'm just giving an example. So my closing costs are $15,000. So I can't ask for more than that. But the lender, so lenders also have criteria for their loans. They may not be, I might not be allowed to ask for that full $15,000. I may only be allowed to ask for a portion. I might be allowed to ask for more. So it just really depends on the loan. Because don't forget, the lender's not keeping these loans, they're selling them. The lenders make loans off their own lines of credit. So that loan is going to be sold in the secondary market. There are criteria for those loans to be sold, and that's what they're looking at. Yeah.
No, I mean, you've pretty much kind of just answered it. My question is, should we, if we are going to ask for a credit, should we have the credit go towards the closing costs versus taking out the purchase price?
Yeah. So this is a conversation I'm having with my buyer and the lender. I'll explain to the buyer that they will be putting less money out of pocket up front, but they really want those things repaired. There might be things there that have to get repaired, and they need to be willing to write that check after close of escrow. If I'm in a situation where the buyer is not going to make those repairs, and I know that those are really essential repairs, in that case, I might want the seller to make the repair. If you're dealing with a buyer that's at their max, like they really can't afford to do it. I mean, if there's let's say there's an issue with the foundation, that there is potentially a problem with one of the rooms could fall. Let's just say it. There's an issue, like the post is cut in half, something like that. And you know that needs to get repaired and the buyer doesn't have the money to do it, they're not gonna do it. And you wanna protect your buyer, I would ask for the seller to do it in that situation. Now, be very careful not to send anything to escrow or the lender. If you're, no matter what, when it comes to repairs, that should not go to escrow or the lender. You don't wanna jeopardize your deal. Okay. I'm not saying to be elusive, I'm just saying that it is possible that you never know what a lender will object to. There is something that a lender can see and say, you know what, we're not loaning on this property. If that's there, we're not loaning. You don't know what that is. Lenders are really weird like that. So
That's why it's better to work with a broker.
it's good to work, it's good to keep in communication with your lender. Brokers might be more aware of issues. So if you're dealing with a direct lender like Chase or Wells Fargo, you might be dealing with someone who's just checking boxes and filling out paperwork, as opposed to someone else who's more seasoned and knows how to make a sellable file for underwriting, right? So just be careful not to send anything to escrow except seller agrees to credit buyer X amount at close of escrow. All right, that's the only thing that the lender should get after the lender approves your language. So always make sure the lender approves the language that you're going to put up on an addendum, right? Because the lenders might want to, they're going to tell you, like I'm going to say, okay, we're asking for $15,000, and he's going to say the lender, he or she is going to say, make sure that it's towards non-recurring closing costs. Okay, whatever. I'm going to do whatever the lender tells me, and I'm making sure that the lender is talking to underwriting. The lender doesn't make the decision. Underwriting makes the final decision. So everything all these answers I'm getting back from the lender, he's clearing with underwriting, he or she.
Yeah, and then just my follow-up. So with that said, is there a strategy for credits to possibly go toward buying down?
So let's say that you need to raise, the seller for whatever reason doesn't want to do a price reduction, right? The seller says, everyone in my neighborhood is going to see the sale price on this property, and I don't want to lower everyone's comps. And the seller's been bragging to all his neighbors about how much he got. And all of a sudden it's going to appear as a lower, right? And all of a sudden it's going to appear as a lower price, and then he's a liar. Okay. So if you really need to increase your closing costs, one way to increase closing costs is to buy down the interest rate on the loan. That's very expensive. So that will increase your, so then you're calling the lender and saying how much, if I want to get from 6 7/8 to 6 1/4, 6 1/2, how much will that cost? And that'll increase the closing costs. Great question. Anything else dealing with buyers? You guys have questions about? So I want to go over contingencies again, time periods, because you're going to have to explain this to your buyer. And I've talked to many attorneys that just, don't feel like it takes you a little time to comprehend. I've talked to many attorneys that still, they don't understand contingencies. So you basically have 3 contingencies in the purchase contract. The buyer wants to know, is my money at risk, right? Am I going to lose my deposit? So the buyer has 3 business days to put their deposit into escrow. 3 business days from acceptance. Okay. Buyer has 3 business days to put their deposit into escrow. 3 business days from acceptance. So if we have an accepted offer on Monday, when does the buyer need to get their money into escrow by? So Thursday. Okay. So the buyer has to get, if we have an acceptance on Monday, the buyer has to get their money into escrow by Thursday. If the money has to be wired, what do you think has to happen on Thursday? I'm asking you that because there's a wire cutoff time. Right? So some banks are 2, some banks are even 1 p.m. So
you call the lender, you call the bank.
I want to make sure that my buyer understands that to have their money in escrow by Thursday, they need to initiate their wire in the morning. Right? Or it's not going to get there on time. No, hopefully they're doing it Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah.
Right. So the first thing I want to do is tell my buyer, I'm sorry, as soon as we have an acceptance, I am finding out the escrow contact information. Who's the seller using for escrow? Hopefully it's Cannon Hills Escrow. here that I wrote into my contract. And then I'm notifying Pele or Shirley that we have an accepted offer. I'm emailing it to them. I'm emailing them my buyer's contact information. And the reason I'm doing that is because they need to send the buyer wire instructions immediately. Right? So I need to make sure that my buyer gets their wire instructions.
Escrow does that.
Escrow is going to send wire instructions to the buyer. The buyer has 3 business days to get their money into escrow. And then I need to make sure that happens in the morning. If they're actually waiting till the 3rd day, I need to make sure that happens in the morning. Otherwise, the money is going to be late. Right?
Right.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
what happens if it is late?
If it is late, then it doesn't look, it's not, I mean, the seller's gonna be upset. I don't want to upset the seller, because I'm gonna be asking the seller for money.
Right.
So I'm trying to keep on good terms with the seller now, because I'm gonna be asking for a credit. As far as the seller, okay, so, you know, as a listing agent, I don't like letting a buyer, I mean, I don't have to say it, but I'm not the seller. But as a listing agent, I don't like a buyer doing their inspections prior to putting their money in escrow. I don't like it. Like, I'm letting someone come in with some ruthless inspectors, they're gonna come in, tear the house apart. They don't even have any skin in the game yet. They haven't put anything in, and they're just gonna rip this house apart with their inspectors, and they have nothing in stake. So I like to see money in escrow. I could be an aggressive listing agent and say no inspections until money is in escrow. I could. I mean, some agents do. I've seen it.
Well, then like, now playing in with the contingency period for the
Yeah.
inspections. If they allow that time.
So it would be up to the buyer to get the money in. So
I
I'm
have-
gonna make sure that escrow gives them the wire instructions right away.
Yeah.
Right? I might even get it before we're even having set off. I don't know. You can call, I can find out who the escrow is that the listing agent's using. And I can already contact that escrow officer up front and say, can you send me wire instructions? Right? Now, always make sure to tell your buyer to confirm the account number and ABA number or routing number over the phone with the escrow officer. Gotta be careful of wire fraud, again. It's happened to so many people that they've wired money to the wrong place. And again, it happens because there are hackers that are sending emails from escrow's email. So if a buyer gets an email from escrow with account information, you know, they're thinking they're sending it to the right place. They have to call escrow, verify the account number and the routing. Okay, so we know about the 3 days from acceptance to get money into escrow. That's not a contingency. That is something that the buyer has to do.
I had a situation recently where a buyer, we kind of went back and forth. It's normally upon opening escrow, EMD is required.
The EMD is okay, so the EMD is the earnest money deposit. This is the deposit. It's called earnest money,
Yeah.
whatever reason they use that term.
On the offer, they wanted me to put, we'll get certain documents upon offer accepted. So let me,
Like proof of funds document.
they were looking for renderings for a development, right?
Okay.
And we went back and forth for like an hour, and then I was like, when we open up escrow, we can have it within the time. And he's like, no, I needed to say upon accepting offer. I don't want to open up escrow and then get the documents. I want the documents as soon as they accept the offer, because there's a time. What if they don't open up escrow within 24 hours?
All right. So I would say just every situation is different. Whenever there's verbiage upon acceptance is, I want all my language in a counter offer or offer to be very clear. That's always my goal, is clarity. There should be no room for debate on meaning of what something says. So that's just how I write all my contracts and counteroffers. Very clear. There's no question what it means. Upon acceptance has a lot of room for what that means. Right? So I would actually spell it out. Such and such document needs to be provided prior to acceptance. Upon acceptance is just room for anything to happen.
Right.
Now, if I'm dealing with the other agent on the other side, and there are some agents that absolutely insist on having verbiage their way, I will cooperate with them as long as it's not putting my client at risk. And my client, look, I can't decide for my client what they're gonna sign,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
But I want to protect my client also. And if there's something questionable, I'm just going to explain to them what they're signing, what the possibilities are, with the way it reads. Right? I'm just going to say, look, this could be open for interpretation, but the other agent is insisting that it gets signed like this, just letting you know how it can be read this way. It can also be read this way. If you're comfortable with this, we'll sign it and get the deal. Right? So I'm just informing my client of possibilities of scenarios.
Yeah.
All right, so contingencies. The buyer wants to know, is my deposit at risk? You know, am I gonna lose my deposit? Okay. The client, your buyer client has zero risk until their contingencies are removed. When I say zero risk, there are some escrows that may charge a small fee if escrow cancels. So that really would be, I also, you know, zero risk is also, I have to be careful with that term. If your buyer does something stupid, they might, right? So if you're gonna back out of a deal, it just has to be done properly. As long as it's done properly, then there is very little risk. So when I say done properly, I mean, on the cancellation form, you want to make sure that's filled out properly. So if they're canceling for anything during their inspection period, you're canceling based upon the paragraph of inspections. Okay. There, it says in the form, buyer hereby cancels based upon paragraph blank. It's generally written in there 14, paragraph 14 is generally the reason someone will cancel. I've heard other attorneys say paragraph 10. I know, but this is the part where we should be talking to Michael Rosales or come to me, and we'll just make sure that it's happening properly, so you're not putting your client at risk. But it's very important how that paperwork is done. I was in a deal where the listing agent was representing his parents' house that he grew up in, right here on Dominion in Beverly Hills. We did inspections and we found in the crawl space some repurposed wood that was used in the foundation that was treated with some chemical, I'm trying to, creosote. Okay, there's something called creosote. I know from past deals that I've done that creosote smells like gasoline, and you cannot get rid of this stuff. And it emits harmful, toxic vapors. There are companies that can encapsulate it. They say they can spray it with something. I know that there's no way. If I see creosote, I run, personally. It's a toxic. They had it in, my buyer has little kids. It's just toxic. This agent wanted them to fill out the cancellation a certain way. And I said, absolutely not. They're canceling based upon paragraph 14. I said, if you put a reason for cancellation, and if you actually type out a reason, that could get challenged. And then all of a sudden you're in a deep mess. So if you use a paragraph as the reason that you're backing out, and the paragraph I'm talking about is the entire inspection paragraph. If you just use that paragraph as the reason you're backing out, an attorney can find a million reasons to back you out of that company. If it gets to that point, it won't get to that. So all I'm saying is use the paragraph.
So, okay, so then the legalese in that
Yeah,
paragraph.
yeah.
Is what we're hiding behind.
Yes,
Rather than.
an actual
the
excuse.
Actual English that you write,
Yes,
saying that creosote is a carcinogen.
correct. I don't want to give anything, I don't want to make anything arguable. Right?
Well.
What, you have issues? What do you have issues with?
Well,
Let's
I
discuss it.
mean, we don't want.
I'm gonna share this.
If I may, I think you might be. He's 100% correct. You
I go there and I.
so ambiguity is always going, so,
We hide behind ambiguity.
yeah.
Yeah, we are.
It can be interpreted in the
It,
future.
it protects you, it protects your client. People will sue you as a result of a real estate transaction for 1,000 different reasons in 1,000 different ways. The more you want to be as directly indirect as possible.
So this paragraph 14 just deals with time periods, removal of contingencies and cancellation rights. And it talks about at the bottom, the buyer's right to cancel. This whole paragraph deals with cancellation. I just am using that paragraph as the reason I'm canceling without giving an actual excuse. There's nothing a seller can do if you're using this excuse.
So you're gonna send them back?
I would send them, there's a cancellation form. There's a form called cancellation investment. Cancellation,
What do you write on that?
I write based upon paragraph 14.
Okay.
And then, but it actually says based upon paragraph, and it lets you fill in the number of paragraph. No, it's actually there. I'm not making up that language.
Oh, I got you.
It says the buyer's canceling because of paragraph number.
Right.
And then it also has a place where you can write in a reason. I will never give a reason. If I give a reason, it can be challenged.
Right.
If I do it on paragraph 14, I have a million reasons. Like I use a million reasons to back up. I'm just protecting my buyer. Who are you representing?
Right.
You have to protect your client. And
What about if you cancel before the buyers put their EIP?
you can always
What
cancel.
would be the
Okay.
reason?
What would be the reason?
Yeah, because
Something,
we haven't done
it would be
inspection.
paragraph 14. Because this is your time period of inspection. This is your time period of gathering information.
But we haven't done the inspection.
It doesn't matter. There's some information that came up that's making you cancel.
Yeah.
You're canceling based upon some information during your investigation period. So whatever that information is, we don't need to give it. We can just say based upon paragraph 1. And that will protect your buyer. And that's when I say there's no risk. As long as you do it properly.
Paragraph 14 is where you find that.
It's the removal of contingent cancellation right paragraph. In the purchase agreement, in the purchase agreement.
Can this still sue you for specific?
Anyone can
performance?
sue anything, anyone can sue anyone for anything. The question is it a valid lawsuit? So, as long as everything's done properly, should be okay. I don't think that there's a seller that wants to tie up their property in court. They want to sell their property. So if they try to keep you as a buyer who doesn't want their property, it's preventing them from selling their property to someone who does want their property. So the seller wants to sell, right? I mean, if I'm a listing agent, I don't want to keep someone in the deal that is going to back out. Like, I want to move on to my next deal. So I get paid. I want to get paid. The seller wants to get paid too. Okay, so yes,
Sorry, correct me if I'm wrong. Paragraph 14 is specifically cancel it or buyer's right to cancel based on investigation of property, right? It doesn't cover appraisal and loan. Those are different
correct.
paragraphs.
So we're just talking about the investigation. We're just talking about the investigation. I have seen attorneys want to use paragraph 10. So this is why I'm saying we should consult with, I always use paragraph 14. So paragraph 10, and that's not paragraph 10 anymore. It's a new,
Are you talking about the paragraph which is just specific to?
the seller. It's specific to the seller having to do specific things in the contract. So the seller has to, like, here's paragraph 12. I don't know. I would use paragraph 14. Look, if you're in a situation where your buyer's canceling, my advice is talk to Mike Rosales briefly about it. Or come to me, we'll talk, but we just wanna make sure it's done properly. There is a paragraph, I don't know what paragraph that is, but there is a paragraph based upon the seller's documents and what they need to give you. The seller has to give you a transfer disclosure statement, they have to give you the seller property questionnaire, they have to tell you if the property's in a fire zone, flood zone, earthquake zone. There's things that the seller has to do. Like that is something that you could back out on. Because if they gave you disclosures and then you're backing out based upon a disclosure, then you could back out on that paragraph. Because you're backing out on a required document, basically. But that's why I just like to use this one, fire investigation. Okay, so as far as contingencies go, a buyer can back out and get their deposit back during the contingency periods. Or longer, if the contingency hasn't been removed. So the contract does say that contingencies have to be removed in writing. So there is a form called contingency removal. Okay, form CR, contingency removal. That form has to be signed in order to remove the contingency. If that form is not signed, the contingency still exists. So I have 17 days to inspect the property. If day 18 comes, day 19, day 20, day 21, if I haven't signed the form contingency removal, I can still back out based upon paragraph 14. Okay. Now, because my time period has elapsed, now the seller can say, your time is up. I want to cancel because you need to make a decision. You either need to remove your contingency or cancel. Because I need to know if I'm moving on with my next buyer. Don't waste my time anymore, buyer. Your time's up. Now the seller, the only thing the seller can do right now is give me a notice to perform. So the seller will give me something called notice to buyer to perform to remove contingency. And then I have 2 days as the buyer to remove my contingency. After 2 days, the seller can now cancel. But I still get my deposit back. Okay, because I didn't sign form contingency removal. If the seller hasn't signed contingency removal, the seller will get the deposit back if the deal cancels. Yes? No? Clear? Okay. That's the inspection contingency. Then we have two other ones. We have the loan and appraisal. So even though the buyer got a pre-approval, there might be something that comes up during the process of the buyer applying for the loan that the lender says, I can't make this loan. It happens. You know, maybe the buyer didn't lock their rate and rates all of a sudden skyrocketed and the buyer can't qualify for the rate that we put on the offer. The buyer could use the loan contingency to back out. There's things that come up. You know, you never know what's going to set off a underwriter. There might be something that the underwriter is afraid that will make the loan unsellable in the secondary market. They're afraid they won't be able to sell it, and they just won't make the loan. The underwriter is the one on the hook. Their job's on the line basically to make sure that they're giving a loan that can be sold. Because the bank does not want to keep that loan, they're going to sell it, and the bank is going to make their money on servicing the loan, collecting the payment every month. They get a fee for that, so that's how they make their money. Okay, the two other, so we have the loan and then the appraisal. The bank is whoever is lending the money is going to have their own independent appraiser come out. Whoever's lending the money wants an appraiser that's not being influenced by the buyer or the seller. The person who's putting the money, the bank, wants to have a third-party independent appraiser come out and give their opinion to let the lender know that their money is being loaned on a safe investment. So most of the time, appraisals will be at the purchase price, most of the time. Because the appraiser just has to justify the number. sometimes you're gonna have a buyer that got their offer accepted for $1 million when they think the property is actually worth 1.2. And they think they're getting such a great deal. This property is worth 1.2. I bought it for $1 million. And the appraisal comes back at $1 million. And they're gonna be like, whoa, I thought I was getting a deal. It turns out I'm only paying fair market value. So just educate your buyer up front. Most appraisals come back at the contract price. Okay, the appraiser is very rarely gonna put a higher price on it unless, they really feel like it because they know it's worth so much more. But the appraiser is putting their own job on the line. If the appraiser gives a value that's wrong, the lender may not hire them anymore to do appraisals. Right? The appraiser wants to make money by going out doing appraisals. So if the appraisal comes back too low, then the buyer can back out based upon the appraisal. So just letting you know, like your buyer that you're dealing with is always going to wonder, is my deposit at risk? You can explain contingencies. In the contract, 17 days is the default number for loan appraisal and investigations, I believe, if nothing's changed. These numbers are constantly on the move.
It's a
17 for all three, just making sure. Okay, so this is paragraph 3L contingencies, and it says 17 for loan, 17 for appraisal, and 17 for inspection. I'm lowering our inspection time because it does not take 17 days to appraise, to investigate a property. You can do it pretty quickly. I am asking the lender how long they need for full loan approval and for the appraisal, because I do want to shorten those time periods if I can. Don't forget, I might be competing with cash buyers. A cash buyer may have no loan or appraisal contingency. Now, beware, as a listing agent, if you receive an all cash offer, there still could be an appraisal contingency. Okay, someone who's buying a property all cash still has the right to have an appraised. So just looking at the purchase contract,
They would have to check the box specifically.
I'm looking for the cash, all cash. So there's a checkbox here on A. On the very first line, it says all cash. So that all cash box can be checked. But these contingencies here on L, these contingencies here still exist. Maybe the loan might not exist, but the appraisal for sure does. Unless you check the box, no appraisal, please. So as a listing agent, I just want you to be aware, when you receive an offer that's all cash, you need to still ask the buyer's agent, is your buyer planning on getting a loan? Because they might have enough cash to show you to purchase the property in complete cash, but they're still going to get a loan. But they want to beat out all the other offers, basically, as a cash offer. I have a buyer who has enough cash in the bank to show that he can afford to buy the property in cash, but he likes to put loans on property. He looks at loans as shared risk. He thinks that if the bank has money in the property, that he's sharing the risk with the bank. If he has all his cash in that property and it burns down, yes, he has to go through insurance, but what if insurance gives him a challenge or doesn't want to pay as much as they need to rebuild the property? He's all of a sudden out a ton of money. So he looks at it like the lenders are sharing the risk with him.
Can you believe it?
I don't know what to believe right now. With insurance companies, I have no idea. Like, all of a sudden, State Farm's pulled out, Farmers pulled out. So, I do know people in Beverly Hills that have had to sue their insurance companies for payouts for fires. Insurance companies, I had a very good experience with State Farm personally, because I have State Farm. I've had a very good experience with them, but there are some companies that won't, their first response is no, or, we'll give you this much, but they need to pay this much. It's up to your buyer to pick a good insurance company. I don't know what a good insurance company is. I know State Farm was good, but I can't recommend them. I don't know. So as far as us making recommendations to our buyers, we always want to recommend 3, no matter who it is, whatever they're asking for. We recommend 3 and let them choose which one. We always just want to remove liability from ourselves. Right? Because if we pick it, it can always be put, hey, it was your guy, you picked it, and all of a sudden we're liable, or we're the bad guy. I don't want to be the bad guy. What else with buyers and purchase agreement? We got contingencies before. Okay, so we got an accepted offer. We had the buyer wire their money. We did our inspections. Now we went through the general inspection and we hired our plumbers to come out, if recommended, our air conditioning inspector to come out. We got all our bids together. We made our request to the seller for repair or credit. Now we agreed on something, we remove our contingencies. We're getting ready to close, this is exciting. The seller is gonna do the retrofitting. Retrofitting means they're hiring a company to check the smoke alarms, carbon monoxide, water heater strapping. Some areas require emergency earthquake gas shut-off valves, low flow toilets. That'll all get handled by the listing agent. If you're the listing agent, you're gonna have to do it. There's companies that you can call. My NHD is one of them that we use. Or not, sorry, not My NHD. My NHD does the report, Natural Hazard Disclosure Report. So as a seller, we do have to order an NHD. It's called a Natural Hazard Disclosure Report. It just says if the property is in a fire zone, flood zone, earthquake zone. But we do need to also do retrofitting. The word retrofitting can be used in different ways. There's something called seismic retrofitting, which is you have apartment buildings. Did you see pictures of the Northridge quake? And you have those apartment buildings that collapsed on the cars.
Yeah.
So that's because you have the tough under parking. After the Northridge quake, the government came in and red tagged a bunch of buildings. And they basically instituted a new law that any apartment building that has the tuck under parking, that area needs to be strengthened. And they call that seismic retrofit. In this case, for us in residential houses and condos, retrofitting to us is smoke alarms, carbon monoxide alarms, and gas heater strapping, low flow toilets, and emergency earthquake gas shut-off valves. That's our retrofit.
That's 17. That's number 17.
So in the contract, it actually says that the seller has 7 days to do it from acceptance. And the reason that the contract, I used to not do it until the buyer removed contingencies. Yeah, so looking just in the center of that page, it says on N4, install smoke alarms, carbon monoxide detectors, and water heater greasing. It gives the seller 7 days after acceptance to do it. I used to not do this until my buyer removed contingencies because they're gonna bill escrow. And they're gonna get paid when escrow closes, escrow will cut them a check. But I didn't want to put my seller on the hook for money unless I knew the buyer was actually gonna do the deal. So when the buyer removes their contingencies, that's when their deposit becomes at risk. I know they're doing the deal now. They're not gonna, the buyer's not gonna walk away from their deposit, right? So that's when the buyer removes all contingencies. Now the seller can move their stuff out of the house, sign their new purchase contract on the place they're moving to, right? They can remove contingencies on their purchase. They can commit to the movers. They can sign a lease. Now let's talk quickly about a scenario where your seller is buying another property. So you have a seller that's buying another property. And they need to use the money from this property to purchase their new property. So there is something called contingency for sale, very good. You're one step ahead. There's something where you can check the box, contingency for sale. So there is a seller contingency where they will find a replacement property first. Now, as a listing agent, for me, if I receive an offer on my listing that the buyer, I'm the buyer's agent, so. Getting confused. I haven't had enough coffee or too much coffee. I don't know which one. On my offer. Okay. Let's talk about a scenario. Okay. There's something here, L8, sale of buyer's property. Sale of buyer's property is not a contingency unless checked here. So we're talking about L8. Okay, I'm a buyer. I can't buy this property without selling my property first. I need to use the proceeds from my sale in order to buy this new property. Right? My money is coming out of my property that I'm selling to buy this property. Okay, there's something here. It says sale of buyer's property. Sale of buyer's property is not a contingency unless checked here. If I check that box, it's going to open a new form. And on that new form, I have to be careful the way I fill it out. There are many ways I can fill it out, but just to let you know, if I am the listing agent now, and I have an offer that comes in, and it's dependent upon the buyer selling their property, I need to make sure I want to know what the address is of their property, and I want to know how much they're going to list it for. I don't want to deal with an unrealistic buyer that thinks they're going to get a fortune for their property. Right? In my counter offer, I'm going to put buyer agrees to list their property by a certain date at a certain price. I'm now going to research the property that the buyer needs to sell to buy my listing. And I want to make sure they're listing it at a number that it's going to get offers. And, right? Otherwise, I'm wasting my seller's time. I'm wasting my time and my seller's time. I need to make sure I'm dealing with a realistic person. So I'm going to put in my counter offer that they're agreeing to list their property by a certain date at a certain price. And that's because I'm sharing that with my seller, that I've done the research. Here's their property. This is what the comps are. We can expect that they will get, the average of this, and that they agree to list it, hopefully just under that, so they can get activity. Where else was I going with this? So I wasn't thinking about that actual clause.
Could you speak on currently closing, so the seller can move out? Yeah.
Oh, yes, that's where I was talking about. Right. So the seller can't make any final decisions until contingencies are removed. So, yes. Now, if you're the listing agent, your seller is, hopefully you're representing your seller on their buy. Hopefully your seller has found the new property that they're buying, and that you have the offer that they're buying on the new property, right? You want to make sure your contingency period on your purchase is longer than the contingency period on your sale. So for instance, You're the listing agent. Your property's for sale. An offer comes in that has 10-day inspections. Okay. You want to make an offer, your seller wants to make an offer on a property that they just fell in love with. You want to make sure that contingency period is, say, 13 or 14 days or 15 days. Because your seller also, your seller buyer also needs the money from the sale of their property. So we need to make sure that the buyer for their property removes their contingencies and has their deposit at risk before you remove your contingencies on the property that your seller is going after. Everyone, it's a little confusing. I hope you're with me. So we don't want, the seller cannot possibly commit to buying that property until the buyer for their property commits to buying their property. Right? We need that commitment. So the buyer for their property is going to remove their contingencies, now enabling this seller to remove the contingencies on the property that they're buying.
So the buyer has to do it first, though.
Yeah, correct.
That makes
How else
sense.
can the seller agree to remove their contingencies?
Right, right.
Now, what's the seller's risk? What if this buyer ends up not being able to do the deal?
Oh, geez.
Well, not necessarily. There's a 3% deposit at risk here, and your seller buyer has a 3% deposit risk. The risk is only the difference between the two deposits. That's only the risk. So it's if they're selling their property for $1 million, there's 30,000 at risk, 3%. If they're buying for say 1.2, right, they have 36,000 at risk. They really only have 6,000 at risk. If this buyer backs out, right, because they're going to take the 30 from them, they're going to give 36, right? So they really only have the difference between the two deposits at risk.
Yeah, it's still ahead.
No, of course, no, nobody wants deals to back out. So I'm putting you guys to sleep. I don't want to do that. We're gonna go through this all the time. Hopefully I went through a lot of scenarios today just to help you explain your buyer's purchase agreements. So we're gonna be starting something new next week, July 1st is Sunday, July 2nd is Monday. And then we have July 4th, a good week. So in all the Keller Williams, all through the world, there's something called Ignite. And it's taught in every Keller Williams. I'm gonna be starting Ignite on Monday. And there's a new Ignite that was done last year, 2022. And I will be going through that here. So Kristen and Justin they made this thing called Elevate, which is what we're doing now. And it's excellent. Like Elevate is excellent. The issue with Ignite used to be that properties, across the country were 150,000, and we're learning Ignite, and you see like examples from the 1970s of everyone with long hair, and it just didn't apply anymore. And that it was just an old thing, and like people were like, "This is not our luxury market, Beverly Hills. Like, why are we learning this?" But it has been fully revamped, and I've been going through everything and cutting out what doesn't apply to us, and adding what does. So we're gonna start Ignite. It's gonna be once a week on Monday, starting next week.
And what time?
I believe 11. I think 10:30 or 11, either one. And that'll be on the calendar.
So
It'll also be on Zoom, but it's just extra. Look, again, I'm gonna be here teaching, helping you guys, whatever you need help with. But what I can't help you with is making your contacts. You have to make your contacts. I sent out a text this morning on WhatsApp. If you're not on WhatsApp, see me, I'll get you on the WhatsApp mentee list.
I
If
have,
you're not on the WhatsApp,
I have a problem with that. I get spam.
get spam on WhatsApp. So whenever I get spammed, I block and report. I get a lot of spam.
Yeah. Comfortable.
So that's what we have now. I don't know if there's something better. I'd like to use it just because people travel, and when you're out of the country, it's a great thing. You only need data for it.
Well, I did see it,
I have no problem doing multiple things, it's just how much, you prefer regular text messages?
Yeah.
So I think there's a limit to how many people can be on a text group. And then Apple and Android have different limits. It gets into a real issue then, and then someone responds to the group and they don't add everybody, and then it becomes a whole issue.
Yeah.
That's why in WhatsApp you can have like an unlimited group.
Yeah.
So,
But for the whole time, I tried it like 3 times. And
Uh-huh.
every time I turned it on, boom, 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 boom.
Right.
There's all these people saying, hey, blah, 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 blah. And then I've had interviews on it, you know.
so I just want to say to everyone, like, I'm really aware everyone needs to make money. That is the most important thing, is our paycheck, right? It's not the most important thing, but it's very important that we pay our bills. The fastest money you're gonna make in this business is leasing. It's the fastest money. You know, you can have nothing going on today, and then you're helping someone find an apartment or a condo to lease or a house, and the listing agent is the one that does all the paperwork. You know, you can literally have a client go lease something and you get paid within a matter of days from that. You know, as soon as they write their checks for the lease, you're gonna get paid.
How does
So
that work? What's the condition of that?
it's so in the MLS, it says CSO,
Okay.
commission to selling office, and you'll see it's 2.5%, 3%. Sometimes it's only $1 bigger. So you gotta be careful, though, look at what it is. But you'll see if you pull up the agent detail short
Mhm.
or the agent detail full, it'll say what the CSO is, and that's what you're getting. But that's the fastest money you can make.
If it's a percentage,
Yeah.
is it a percentage of the whole lease?
So-
Or is it a certain?
Unless it says otherwise, it's a percentage of the whole lease. If it says based upon first year only, then it's based upon first year only. So, and then the way that the money is divvied up, we always want the tenant to make 3 checks. They're gonna make the listing agent's check, the selling broker's check, and the landlord check. Commissions are taken out of the money that gets delivered up front. So we're never relying on the landlord to pay our commissions. When the tenant makes a check, they'll make 2 checks. Commissions are deducted upfront.
And is that something that you have to discuss with the tenant, that they'll be paying you commission, or it's?
No, the tenant is not paying the commission. The landlord's paying the commission. It gets deducted from the amount that he was giving the landlord. So let's just say we have a $1,000 a month rent. That's 12,000 for the year, right? Our commission will be calculated based upon the 12,000 for the 1 year. The landlord is gonna get first in security. So let's just say that's $1,000 plus $2,000. So the landlord should be getting a check for 3,000 first in security, but they're not gonna get 3,000. They're gonna get 3,000 less commission. And then the tenant will make a check for listing broker commission, selling broker commission, and then the balance of the blend. That's how it's done, and that's how we get paid immediately. Yeah, but there's a form called, I'm losing my head today. There's a form called, so here are all the KW Beverly Hills disclosures. So I don't have lease here. KWBH disclosures. Okay, I'm glad I'm looking at this because usually I have a lease. I usually have a lease folder in there in the KWBH disclosures. It has a breakdown. It's just basically one sheet that says this much is going to go to the listing agent, this much is going to go to the broker, to the buyer's agent, and this will go to the landlord. And it's a KW form. Other companies will have their own form. And so if you're representing the landlord, you're usually going to be the one filling out the lease paperwork. Right? Because you're the one, it's your deal. So if you're representing the tenant, you're usually using the landlord lease. So they're doing all the good work, really, really great, so they'll do all the good work. We're just gonna add our Keller Williams stuff.
What's the best way to find these, they say, people, managers or owners who need these things?
How to find tenants?
Not, well, not how to find tenants, but,
You're gonna go on the MLS to find properties for lease that are offering you commission.
okay,
So that looks be on the MLS.
what are other ways?
The other ways are driving around a neighborhood and seeing signs in the front saying for lease. Now, those are usually not in the MLS, those are mom and pop apartment
okay.
buildings.
So that's like
For sale by owner, yeah, for sale by owner in the front,
It's
yeah,
the same
be the
lease,
same for lease.
let me lease it for you.
Yeah, literally, or I have, or just calling them and say, I have someone interested in your lease, will you pay commissions? That's all, and then at that point, you'll fill out a single party agreement.
Okay, I need to.
Thank you so much.
Okay, guys, all right, hope I didn't bore you to death.
I need to be. I need to have a folder ready.
So all you need to do really is talk to people and then ask, tell them you're here to help them. Help them find a lease, help them move into somewhere, help them buy something or help them sell something. Once you have someone that you're helping, then contact me and I'll help you. So, but that's why I'm saying you need to make your contacts. Like that's your one daily thing. You have to call people that you know and tell them that you're doing real estate.
Yeah.
And ask them if there's anything that you can help them with.
Yeah, well, I need it, I'm trying to get my own place, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. So,
I need
okay,
a place
so-
then.
So if you're looking for your own place, you go on the MLS.
Uh-huh,
You'll go on the MLS and you'll look for anything that's active release in the area that you're looking. And then you'll see, when you pull it up, you'll see what the CSO is, the commission selling office. And then you should be entitled to that money, because you're licensed. So,
That's what I've been waiting on, was to get my license.
yeah, you might find some places that don't offer a CSO. And then it's up to you to ask, do you pay commission?
Right,
Right.
okay.
Any other questions before we break? No?
You said something about this app that this is you.
Oh, WhatsApp. WhatsApp.
What's that?
Yeah, WhatsApp.
So,
Are you on WhatsApp? You have it?
I'm not sure.
Okay. You're using an Apple? Are there any other questions before we break? Any
Do I need
questions?
to write anything down?
Need to write anything down?
I had a question.
Okay, yes, please.
What were you all saying the WhatsApp was for? Which group? What's that for?
So WhatsApp is an app. It's a chat and video app. I think Facebook owns it. It's supposed to be.
I mean, I have WhatsApp, but am I just trying to join a group? And what was the group?
Yeah, so there's a KW Beverly Hills mentee group. If you email me, I will send you the QR code that you can scan and be added to the group.
Okay, what's your email?
So it's JJWALLACK@kw.com.
Okie dokie.
JJ Wallack, JJWALLACK@kw.com. And I'll
Awesome.
send you the QR code and you'll just hold it up, I don't
My
know.
phone.
You'll hold-
Awesome. Yeah, because one of my biggest questions is what you kind of covered today regarding when a seller's ready to buy a home and like how to make that transition smooth. It is a contingent upon me finding a property, but it can be a little tricky of like when, after they remove contingencies, like you said, they can start packing and all of that kind of stuff.
So just
But,
email me and I'm gonna call you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Oh.
Have a great one, you all.
Okay, now what?
I'm not paying It's in the chat. So I have to get serious. And I don't understand. I never ignored it. I gotta get it out of here.
I told you this.
I was, I'm not planning on taking any more time. But I have to. Yeah, but yes, I know. Well, you don't have to. Sure. Are you ready? I'm making sure JJ's done.
Oh, okay. 86. I'm gonna go there.
And sometimes we don't want to. Maybe get a big difference. You never make all the last one.
Sorry. Sorry.
Great job. Yeah. Across the street.
Anyone know how to add, do you know how to add like QR code to WhatsApp?
Yeah.
You should do it, take a picture.
How do I add a, like, take my picture? Yeah, man, I like that. Where's my
Camera.
camera on my phone? I wanna add this. Oh, yeah, that's just from the camera. Okay, that'll work. Okay. That'll work.
Sometimes you have apps too.
That'll
Like I have 2 apps, but, you know, I do.
Okay, don't be nasty, this is one group. And that's it. We'll do that later on.
Okay, I don't have to do anything.
That's it. So now, everything I texted you.
Okay, so I'll see this right here.
Yeah. Forgot about that. Hi. Hi, Michaela. Yes, yes, yes. You too. You too. Welcome.
Yes, your class for tomorrow, is it part 1 or is it?
My class tomorrow, I think, is.
Oh, I'm fine with it. I don't. We got that.
Listed already, so that's a good one.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. Good, good. Very good. Thank you, Michaela.
Yeah.
My email, is for the WhatsApp?
Yeah.
Oh, here. You just
Actually,
open-
yeah.
Just open your camera, yeah.